The galaxy had known many strange and powerful things. Beings who could manipulate the very fabric of reality, civilizations that spanned entire star systems, and technologies that could bend time itself. Yet nothing had prepared them for the arrival of Alex Turner. A rift, dark and swirling with unnatural energy, suddenly appeared in the center of the galaxy. It was like a wound in the universe, pulsing with a faint, ominous glow. Ships from the various galactic races, including some of the most advanced species, observed the rift from a distance, unsure of what to make of it. They had seen anomalies before, but this was different. No one had ever seen a rift that looked so unstable, so dangerous. And yet, from it emerged a single human. Alex Turner stumbled out of the rift, his clothes torn and face smeared with the marks of what seemed like an impossible journey. He was an ordinary human, seemingly no different from the countless others on Earth. His eyes blinked against the brightness of the stars, his hands outstretched as if trying to catch himself in a world that made no sense. He didn't understand it. He didn't understand any of it. All he knew was that one moment, he'd been in his apartment in New York, trying to solve an engineering problem. And the next, he was here, in a strange universe. The stars were too close, the ships in the distance were far too advanced, and the hum of technology in the air was unlike anything he'd ever heard. Before he could make sense of it, a voice echoed around him. It was soft, deep, and yet carried an edge of authority. Human, state your purpose. Alex's head snapped up, but no one was in sight. The voice seemed to come from everywhere, a presence that filled the air itself. He hesitated but spoke, unsure if anyone could even hear him. I don't know. I don't know where I am. A holographic figure appeared before him. It was an alien, tall and imposing, with skin like polished obsidian and eyes that glowed faintly, like stars on the horizon. It regarded Alex with an unreadable expression. You are on the fringe of the Galactic Council's domain, the alien said in a voice that vibrated in Alex's chest. You are not meant to be here. Humans have never crossed the rift. And yet, here you stand. Alex swallowed hard, the weight of the alien's words sinking in. I didn't mean to. I was in my apartment, and then this thing opened up, and I ended up here. I have no idea how or why. The alien seemed to study him for a long moment, as though evaluating his every word, his every movement. Your arrival is unprecedented. We must report this. Before Alex could ask what that meant, several other figures appeared. More aliens, their forms ranging from humanoid to bizarre, their presence exuding power and authority. Alex could feel their eyes on him, scrutinizing him as if he were some kind of exhibit. The weight of their stares made his heart race. What is this place? Alex asked, his voice sounding smaller than he intended. This is the center of galactic order, one of the aliens replied, its voice sharp and cold. You have no place here. You will be studied, judged, and then... Enough. A new voice interrupted, one far more powerful and commanding than the others. A being appeared, taller and more magnificent than any Alex had seen before. Its very presence felt like an entire star system in one body. We will not kill them. The council of aliens fell silent. They turned toward the towering figure, their faces filled with a mix of fear and respect. The being seemed to be one of the council's leaders, its authority absolute. What do you propose? One of the others asked, voice trembling. The leader's gaze turned to Alex. This human may be more important than any of us realize. The galaxy had witnessed many powerful beings, but the arrival of Alex Turner was something entirely new. The strange, unknown human was no longer just a curiosity. He was now the subject of intense interest and scrutiny. The Galactic Council, made up of the most powerful and ancient species in the universe, had convened to decide his fate. The council chamber was massive, its walls alive with energy, and its ceiling disappearing into the stars above. A table made of shimmering metal stretched across the center of the room, where representatives from countless species sat in silence. Their eyes were fixed on Alex, who stood before them, still trying to make sense of what was happening. "You must understand, human," the towering alien who had first spoken to Alex said, its voice calm but heavy with authority. "You are here for a reason, and that reason is a challenge that will prove your worth to the galaxy." Alex blinked. "A challenge? What kind of challenge?" "The divine trials, human," the alien replied. "The tests created by the gods themselves, meant to determine whether you possess the strength, wisdom, and power to survive in the galaxy. They are the very foundation of cosmic order. Many beings have attempted these trials, and most have failed. But you're something different." Alex didn't know what to say. A challenge. He was just a guy who had somehow ended up in another universe. But the serious looks from the alien council made it clear that they were expecting something from him. The voice of a second alien, a being with a body made of shifting energy, hummed through the room. "The first trial, human, will test your strength of will. It is a trial that breaks the weak-minded. You will be thrust into an environment designed to break you, to force you to face your deepest fears. Most fail this trial within moments. Are you prepared?" Alex took a deep breath, trying to steady his racing heart. He had no idea what he was about to face, but the words of the alien echoed in his mind. "Most fail within moments." "I'm ready," Alex said, more to himself than to anyone else. He didn't know if it was true, but if he had any hope of surviving, he had to face whatever came next. With a wave of the council leader's hand, the space around Alex shifted. The chamber faded away, replaced by a barren, storm-swept wasteland. The wind howled in his ears, and the ground beneath him cracked and split, sending tremors through his body. Alex stumbled forward, looking around. He saw nothing but desolation, cracked earth, roiling skies, and distant mountains. His heart pounded in his chest, but there was something worse waiting. Suddenly, a shadow moved in the distance. It was a figure, familiar, yet terrifying. It was his father. Alex froze. His father had been the one person who had always told him he would never amount to anything, the one who had belittled him his entire life. He could hear the words echoing in his ears. "You're nothing, Alex. You'll never be anything." But it wasn't just the voice, it was the presence. The figure advanced slowly, a dark specter that seemed to grow with every step. Alex could feel his mind faltering, doubts creeping in. "Not again," Alex muttered under his breath. He had struggled for years with his father's constant criticism, the feeling of never being good enough, always trying to prove himself. But that was the past. It was over. He forced himself to stand tall. "I'm not that person anymore." He clenched his fists and pushed the figure away. The shadow seemed to ripple, but didn't fade. It spoke again, its voice full of venom. "You will fail, just like always." Alex shook his head, feeling the weight of his father's words bearing down on him. But he remembered something his mother had told him long ago. "You don't have to be perfect. You just have to keep going." With all his willpower, Alex reached deep inside himself. He pushed past the darkness, past the crushing weight of his father's voice, and found a strength he didn't know he had. The shadow faltered, then disappeared, evaporating into the air. The wasteland around Alex began to shift and fade, the harsh winds calming. For the first time since he'd arrived, he felt a sense of peace. His heart still raced, but now he stood taller than ever before. The council's voice echoed in the distance, a mixture of awe and disbelief. "Incredible. You've passed the first trial." Alex didn't know how he'd done it, but he had. And there was no turning back now. He had entered the galaxy's trials, and he had survived. But what would come next? The thought sent a shiver down his spine, but he was ready. Whatever came, he would face it. Alex stood in the aftermath of the first trial, his heart still pounding from the mental battle he had just faced. The wasteland had vanished, and he was back in the council chamber, standing before the galaxy's most powerful beings. The holographic forms of the alien council flickered around him, their expressions unreadable. They were studying him closely, as though trying to figure out just what kind of human they were dealing with. What just happened? Alex muttered to himself, still trying to process the experience. The fear, the doubts, the shadow of his father, it had all felt so real. But somehow he had pushed through it. He'd passed the first trial, though he still wasn't sure how. "You've done the impossible," Human, one of the council members, a being of light and energy, spoke in a voice that sounded both curious and awed. "The first trial was meant to break you, yet you survived it with an ease that defies explanation." Alex glanced up, meeting the eyes of the alien leader who had first spoken to him. "I'm not sure how I did it. I just kept going. I guess that's what we do. We keep going." The leader's eyes narrowed, a flicker of something passing through them. Recognition, maybe. It is not often that we encounter such resolve. You may be more than what we first thought. Before Alex could respond, the space around him shifted again. The walls of the council chamber seemed to dissolve into a vast, starry expanse. He felt a sudden weightlessness, his body floating as if gravity had been removed entirely. "You now face the second trial," the voice of the leader echoed in the infinite void. "This test will measure your ability to manipulate time and space. Even the most advanced beings in the galaxy have struggled with this. Many have failed, lost in the very fabric of existence." Alex's stomach lurched. Time and space. He didn't know the first thing about manipulating either. But as he looked around at the infinite stars, he couldn't help but feel a strange pull, an intuition that something was different. Something inside him was waking up. Without warning, the stars around him began to swirl, their points of light stretching like threads of silk, twisting into patterns. The space itself seemed to bend and twist, pulling and warping around him. Time seemed to slow, then speed up, and Alex was thrown into a dizzying kaleidoscope of moments, his life flashing before his eyes in fragments. He saw himself as a child, his first bike ride, moments with his mother, and of course, the harsh words of his father. But then, something inside him clicked. "I have to control this," Alex muttered under his breath. He focused, narrowing his thoughts. If this was a test of manipulating time and space, then the only way to survive was to stop letting it control him. He had to adapt, just like he had on Earth, facing challenges with creativity, not raw power. A surge of energy flowed through him. It was like a switch had been flipped. He felt a connection to the swirling cosmos around him, as though the very fabric of space and time was now within his grasp. Slowly, he stretched his hand out, and the stars seemed to shift, bending and realigning with his movements. He was guiding the very forces that governed the universe. The stars flickered brightly in response. Time slowed, then halted. The stars stopped their endless rotation, frozen in place, and Alex, now fully aware of his abilities, took a deep breath. The power surged through him, but he controlled it. He had done it. Unbelievable. The council leader's voice reverberated through the stillness of space. "You have not only manipulated time and space, you have bent them to your will." Alex opened his eyes, his mind racing. He had just done the impossible. The second trial had been meant to break him, just like the first, but this time he felt different. There was something inside him that had awakened, something more powerful than he could understand. The stars around him flickered back to their natural motion. The void seemed to exhale, and the space returned to its original form. Alex found himself back in the council chamber, the alien representatives all staring at him with a mix of astonishment and disbelief. "You have passed," the leader said, his voice low and filled with awe. "No one has ever succeeded in the second trial before. You are unlike any being we have encountered." Alex looked at the aliens, his chest swelling with a strange mix of pride and uncertainty. "I don't know what's happening to me," he said, his voice quieter this time. "But I think I'm starting to understand." The council's gaze grew even more intense, as if they were no longer just observing him. They were now watching someone who could change the course of the galaxy itself. The moment Alex finished the second trial, a heavy silence fell over the council chamber. The alien representatives, once confident in their belief that no human could possibly overcome these trials, were now forced to confront the unthinkable. Alex was succeeding. He had defied every expectation, mastering challenges that had shattered even the gods. Alex stood still, breathing heavily, as he tried to process the magnitude of what he had just done. He had manipulated time and space like it was second nature, something that felt strangely familiar, like a deep primal connection to the universe itself. But even as he stood victorious, Alex sensed a shift in the atmosphere. The aliens, though stunned, weren't filled with admiration. They were filled with fear. The council leader, a towering figure of crystalline energy, was the first to speak. "This is unprecedented. We must reevaluate our assumptions. This human is a threat." A murmur rippled through the council. Some of the other members exchanged uneasy glances, while others were clearly trying to suppress a growing sense of panic. "You all saw it," the leader continued, its voice more tense than before. "He has tapped into powers that even we, the gods of this galaxy, can barely comprehend. We cannot allow this to continue." From the back of the chamber, a voice spoke, cold and full of disdain. "What you fail to understand is that this human is not just an anomaly. He is a symbol of the chaos that threatens our dominion. He has the potential to unseat us all." The voice belonged to an ancient being, a dark god whose name was spoken only in whispers. The gods had ruled for millennia, maintaining an iron grip on the galaxy. The idea that a human, someone so small and insignificant, could rise above them was a concept they could not tolerate. "Do not let his success fool you," the dark god warned. "He may seem harmless now, but soon he will surpass us. And when that happens, the balance of the galaxy will be destroyed." The council shifted uncomfortably. Their unease was palpable. They had faced many challenges in their long existence, but nothing like this. A human, with nothing more than the raw determination and ingenuity of his species, was proving to be far more powerful than they had anticipated. Alex, standing in the center of the room, was beginning to feel the weight of their fear. They were afraid of him. He had never intended to be a threat. He had just been trying to survive, to make sense of a world that had been thrust upon him. But as the pressure from the council mounted, he began to realize the true magnitude of what he was up against. "You can feel it, can't you?" The voice of the dark god echoed in his mind, invasive and chilling. "You are not welcome here, human. You were never meant to be part of this galaxy. Your existence disrupts everything. It would be better for all if you were destroyed now, before you become too powerful." Alex clenched his fists, trying to push the voice away. He had faced his demons before, his father's cruel words, his own self-doubt. But this was different. The galaxy itself seemed to be turning against him. But he would not be broken. "I won't be intimidated," Alex said, his voice steady but firm. "I've come this far, and I'm not backing down now. If you want me gone, you'll have to stop me. But know this, I won't be the one who's destroyed." The council fell silent. The god who had spoken had no response, but the tension in the room was unbearable. The gods had not expected a human to possess such a will, such defiance. They had underestimated him, and now they were forced to confront the fact that their hold on the galaxy was no longer secure. The leader of the council spoke again, this time with a solemn tone. "We cannot allow this to go on. A decision must be made." Alex's heart raced as he realized what was happening. The gods were considering what to do with him. Would they destroy him? Or would they try to contain him, to control him? Whatever the decision, Alex knew one thing. He wasn't going to let them dictate his future. The gods had ruled the galaxy for far too long, but now things were changing. And Alex Turner, a human from Earth, was at the center of it all. The room remained still, thick with the weight of unspoken decisions. Alex felt the gravity of the situation pressing down on him. The gods, the ancient beings who had controlled the galaxy for eons, were now faced with something they hadn't anticipated. A human, someone from a backwater world who had not only passed the trials, but had done so in a way that defied their understanding of power. "You speak of defiance," the dark god hissed, its voice like ice, "but you do not understand the consequences of your actions. You've tapped into powers that are not meant for your kind. The fabric of reality itself could tear if you continue down this path." Alex stood tall, his heart beating steadily despite the overwhelming pressure. "I didn't ask for any of this. I was just trying to survive, trying to understand what's happening to me. But if this is the price of survival, then so be it. I'll face whatever comes." The council leader's gaze was heavy with calculation. This is unlike anything we've seen before, a human with the potential to rival the gods. "We cannot let you continue without understanding the full extent of your power. The galaxy depends on balance." A surge of power crackled through the air as another council member, a being of shimmering liquid light, spoke. "We will give you a choice, human. You can either submit to the will of the gods and accept the limits of your power, or you can refuse our offer and face the consequences. Choose wisely." The tension in the chamber grew thick as the alien beings waited for Alex's response. Each of them, even the ones who had seemed sympathetic at first, now exuded an air of cold authority. They were used to commanding galaxies, controlling systems, and maintaining their position as rulers of all. And here, standing before them, was a human who threatened to upend everything they had built. Alex took a deep breath, feeling the weight of their gazes on him. He could feel the power coursing through his body, a power he didn't fully understand, yet could no longer ignore. He thought about Earth, his family, his life before all this madness, and he realized that, for better or worse, he could no longer be just an ordinary man. "I don't want to be a pawn in your game," Alex finally said, his voice resolute, "but I'm not going to stand by while you decide my fate. I'll choose my own path." The council's expressions hardened, and for the first time, Alex could sense a ripple of doubt among them. This human was not afraid. He was standing against them, not out of rebellion, but out of necessity. He had no choice but to fight, and in that, the gods saw something terrifying. The universe was not just an orderly system they controlled. It was unpredictable, chaotic, and Alex was its proof. "You have no idea what you're up against," the dark god sneered. "But you will. When the galaxy turns against you, when the ancient forces you've awakened come for you, you will wish you had chosen submission." Alex's heart pounded, but his resolve only grew stronger. "Then let them come. I'll face whatever's out there. I'm done being afraid." The council leader nodded slowly, his eyes narrowing. "You may have passed the trials, human, but the trials were only the beginning. What lies ahead is something you cannot even begin to comprehend. You will not be the first to stand against us, but you may be the last." A sudden flash of light filled the room, and for a brief moment, Alex was overwhelmed by the sheer force of cosmic power that pulsed around him. He felt it deep in his bones, a power that he knew would change everything. He was no longer a human caught in the web of the gods' design. He was something more. The leader raised a hand, and the room grew silent. "Then we have no more words to speak. The choice is yours, human. But know this, if you continue on this path, the galaxy will either bend to your will, or it will break under your weight." With those final words, the council dissipated, their figures fading into nothingness. Alex was left alone, in the vast emptiness, the weight of the decision pressing down on him. He had chosen to fight, to defy the gods and their ancient rule. But now, he realized, the real battle was just beginning. The chamber was empty. The gods, the beings who had ruled the galaxy for millennia, were gone, leaving Alex alone in the vast, hollow space. The weight of their words still hung heavy in the air, their threats and warnings swirling around him like a storm. Yet, despite the fear they had tried to instill, a part of Alex felt an undeniable surge of clarity. He had made his choice. There was no going back now. Alex's chest rose and fell with each breath as he stood in the emptiness. His mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. The council, the dark god's threats, the overwhelming power he had tapped into, they were all far beyond anything he had ever imagined. The universe had revealed itself to be far larger, far more complicated than the simple life he had once known. And in this new reality, he was no longer just an observer. He was a player. But what did that mean? What was he supposed to do with this power? The truth was, Alex had no idea. He had never asked for any of it. He had simply been trying to survive. Now, however, it seemed survival was no longer enough. There was a deeper purpose that had been thrust upon him, whether he wanted it or not. Suddenly, a familiar voice echoed in his mind. "Alex, are you still there?" It was the voice of an old friend, Asha, someone from his Earth life who had always believed in him even when he didn't believe in himself. He hadn't expected to hear her now, not in this place, not in the midst of the chaos. But her voice brought a strange comfort. "I'm here, Asha," Alex whispered, surprised that her voice could still reach him. It felt like a connection to the world he had left behind. "But I'm not sure how much longer I'll be here." "The gods." "I know," she interrupted, her voice firm but gentle. "I know you've been through a lot, Alex, but remember who you are. You've always been someone who never backs down from a challenge, no matter how impossible it seems. This isn't any different." Her words anchored him, grounding him in the storm of thoughts swirling in his mind. No matter how powerful the gods were, no matter what threats they had made, he was still Alex Turner. He had always found a way to rise above the odds, and this was no different. "I'm not giving up," Alex said, the conviction in his voice growing. "But I don't know what I'm supposed to do now. The galaxies turned against me, and these gods, they're not just going to let me walk away. They're scared of you," Ash's voice said, a hint of a smile in her tone. "They should be. You've done what no one else could. But you're not alone. You've got this." For the first time since his arrival in this strange galaxy, Alex felt a spark of hope. He had been chosen by fate, not for his ability to wield power, but for something far more important: his spirit, his refusal to submit, his belief that he could overcome anything, no matter the odds. With a deep breath, Alex gathered himself. The storm inside him calmed, replaced by a renewed sense of purpose. The galaxy, once a vast and mysterious place, was now something he was a part of. And the gods, as powerful as they were, had underestimated one key thing: the strength of a human who refused to bow down. The silence around him shifted. The void of space began to pulse with energy, and in the distance, he saw it: an enormous fleet, ships unlike anything he had ever seen. The gods had sent their forces, not just to observe him, but to crush him. Their power was vast, their reach infinite. But Alex wasn't afraid. He was ready. "You want to fight?" Alex muttered, his voice filled with quiet determination. "Then you'll get one. I won't just survive. I'll make sure the galaxy knows who I am." As the fleet drew closer, a new resolve settled within him. The trials were only the beginning. Now, Alex Turner had become a force of his own, and the galaxy would either bend to his will or it would break. The fleet of ships loomed in the distance, vast and intimidating, each one a testament to the power the gods had wielded for eons. There were hundreds of them, sleek, ominous, and brimming with the kind of technology Alex could only dream of understanding. These were not just warships, they were symbols of the gods' absolute control over the galaxy. But Alex was no longer afraid. The events of the past few days had changed something deep within him. He had tapped into powers he didn't fully comprehend, and he had seen the vast potential of humanity in ways he never could have imagined. The gods may have controlled everything, but Alex wasn't just any human. He was a human who had survived the impossible, and he wasn't about to let this fight be any different. As the fleet drew nearer, Alex focused. He could feel the power swirling inside him, the raw energy of the universe itself. Time and space bent to his will now, and though he was still learning the full scope of his abilities, he knew that this was the moment he had been preparing for. With a snap of his fingers, the stars around him seemed to bend. The air vibrated with energy, and the ships in the distance came to an abrupt halt. Time seemed to freeze for a moment, and Alex felt a strange calm wash over him. He wasn't just using power to fight. He was using his mind to bend reality, just as he had done in the second trial. The fleet had no idea what was happening. They thought they were marching toward an easy victory, to crush a single human who had dared defy the gods. They were wrong. The lead ship, a massive behemoth of dark metal, sent a signal to the other ships, but before it could even begin its attack, Alex reached out. The ship's energy systems flickered, and its trajectory altered as if some invisible hand had gripped it. The entire fleet halted, suspended in space, and for a moment, the silence was deafening. Then, Alex spoke, his voice carrying across the vast expanse. "I'm done being controlled. I'm done being a pawn. If you want this galaxy to remain under your rule, you'll have to destroy me. But know this, you won't win." The gods, hidden within the ships, did not respond immediately. But Alex could feel their presence, an oppressive weight that sought to break him. He knew they were testing him, pushing him, trying to find a weakness. They had been rulers for so long, they didn't understand what it meant to be vulnerable. The dark god's voice returned, colder than ever. "You cannot hope to fight us, human. We are eternal. We are the ones who shaped the galaxy. You are nothing but a speck of dust, and we will wipe you from existence if we must." Alex's eyes narrowed as he concentrated. A surge of energy exploded from him, twisting space around him like a storm. The fleet's ships began to rattle, the very fabric of reality straining under the pressure of Alex's power. He could feel the gods' energy crackling against his own, and for the first time, he felt their true might. It was immense, far beyond anything he had encountered, but it wasn't unbeatable. Not if he fought with everything he had. "You may have shaped this galaxy," Alex said, his voice strong, "but it's mine now. This galaxy isn't a prison for me, and I won't let you use it as one anymore." With a snap, the ships began to tremble, and the once unmovable fleet shuddered as Alex sent a wave of energy across the entire armada. The ships, once so imposing, now seemed fragile. They were powerful, but they were not invincible. They could be broken. The dark god's voice echoed in his mind again, louder and more threatening. "You have made a grave mistake, human. You are playing with forces you do not understand. We will not tolerate this insolence." But Alex didn't hesitate. The energy inside him swelled to a level he hadn't even realized was possible. The galaxy was shifting around him, shaking, breaking, and reforming with every thought, every movement. The fleet, the gods, everything was within his reach. "You may have created this galaxy," Alex said, the storm of power rising in his words, "but now I am the one who will shape its future." The battle had begun. The galaxy itself was his battlefield, and Alex Turner was no longer just a survivor. He was a force in his own right, and the gods had made a grave mistake underestimating him. The void of space, once a calm and predictable expanse, now trembled with the chaotic energy that Alex had unleashed. The gods' fleet, which had once seemed an insurmountable wall of power, was now a scattered, disorganized mess. Ships twisted and broke apart under the pressure of his will, their once impenetrable shields flickering and collapsing. Alex stood at the center of it all, eyes blazing with determination. The dark god's voice returned, filled with palpable fury. You think this is over. You have no idea what you've started, human. You cannot defeat the gods. Even if you break our fleet, you will never destroy the very essence of our power." Alex clenched his fists, the raw energy within him humming like a storm about to break. He had fought too long, had come too far, to let these threats break his spirit. He was more than just a man now. He was the embodiment of defiance itself. "I'm not trying to destroy you," Alex said, his voice steady, filled with the conviction of someone who had seen beyond the gods' lies. "I'm trying to free this galaxy from your control. Your reign ends now, not because of your power, but because you've forgotten what it means to live, to truly exist." He reached out with his mind, and the very fabric of space responded. A wave of energy radiated outward, not as a destructive force, but as a force of liberation. The ships around him began to break free from their once controlled orbits, the gods' hold over them weakening. Alex could feel the oppressive energy of the dark god, attempting to push back, but it was no longer enough. The balance of the universe was shifting, and Alex was its new center. The dark god's voice seethed, laced with panic. "You cannot undo what we have done. We have shaped this galaxy for millennia. You cannot simply erase that history." Alex's gaze hardened. "You've shaped it with fear and oppression. What I'm doing is giving it a chance to grow, to thrive, without you." With a single thought, the energy around Alex exploded in a pulse of light so intense that it seemed to stretch across the very fabric of reality. The dark god's form flickered, wavered, and then began to dissipate. The god's presence streaked in rage and fear, but it was clear now. It was losing. The power of the gods was not infinite. It had been sustained by fear, by control, by subjugation. And Alex, with nothing but his resolve and the strength of humanity itself, had shattered it. The other gods, once proud and invincible, fell into disarray. Their power, so long unchallenged, was no match for the sheer force of Alex's will. The galaxy, once a domain of their absolute control, now quaked under the weight of its newfound freedom. The stars themselves seemed to shimmer brighter, as if the universe was awakening from a long, suffocating slumber. Alex felt the pressure around him begin to ease. The gods' grip on the galaxy was loosening, their forces scattered and crumbling under his might. But the fight was far from over. The dark god may have been broken, but the others were still out there, and they were not likely to simply fade into nothingness. They would regroup. They would retaliate. But Alex didn't fear them. He had already overcome the impossible. He had proven that even the gods could be defeated, that the will of one human could reshape the very nature of the galaxy. And now, with the power of the universe at his fingertips, he would ensure that this new reality, one free from oppression, one of true freedom, was never taken away again. The war had not ended, but the gods had been humbled. The future was now in the hands of those who had once been ruled, and Alex Turner, the human who had defied the impossible, would lead them into this new era.